Welcome to another episode in our series 100 Years at the Library, which looks at the history of the Frick Art Reference Library through some of the fascinating objects in its collections. It is rare that a library's history intersects with world history. However, 2 decades after the Frick Art Reference Library's founding, World War II demanded a response from all areas of society, including the cultural sphere. The library staff became involved in the fight to preserve invaluable cultural treasures during the war. These efforts were part of the US Army's Monuments, Fine Arts and Archives program. Popularly known as the Monuments Men, this program represented an unprecedented consideration by a belligerent power of the effects of war on culture. For the first time in its history, from July 1943 to January 1944, the library closed to the public to serve as the headquarters of the newly formed Committee on the Protection of Cultural Treasures in War Areas. The committee worked to prepare maps of European cultural sites to be avoided during bombing missions and after the invasions of Italy and France, during artillery fighting on the ground. The Frick Art Reference Library's collection was already rich in travel guidebooks from Baedeker, Guide Bleu and the Touring Club Italiano, which had been acquired since 1920. Some of the copies belonged to library founder Helen Clay Frick. For the Monuments Men's efforts, the guides were supplemented by an early form of crowdsourcing. A questionnaire was sent out by the American Council of Learned Societies to its members, inviting those who had recently visited Europe to share their expertise, maps, and recent photographs. This information was then compiled into lists of at-risk monuments and art objects, which were marked on maps supplied by the Army Map Service, the Library of Congress, and the American Geographical Society, or adapted from the guidebooks themselves. Over 700 maps were made in total at the Frick, under the direction of William B. Dinsmore, a professor of classical archaeology at Columbia University. One Pittsburgh newspaper praised the committee's efforts, describing its output as treasure maps. But just how effective were these maps? One notable example is this map of Pisa, Italy, which Frick committee members marked with the city's key cultural monuments. We also have a US Air Force photograph from a later bombing raid on the railway yards at Pisa. We can see that, thanks to maps like those prepared at the Frick, the area north of the yards remained largely intact, including the famous Leaning Tower, which was spared from damage. These materials were also made into handbooks, and starting in 1944, smaller backpack versions were made for officers to consult in the field. After the Frick Art Reference Library reopened to the public in January 1944, the Committee on the Protection of Cultural Treasures in War Areas remained at the library, focusing on the salvage and recovery of stolen works of art. From that point, the library's vast holdings helped to identify and trace works of art looted by the Nazis and Axis powers, with the ultimate goal of returning them to their rightful owners. Today, researchers continue to utilize the library for restitution work, which is a complex and ongoing process. In gratitude for the Frick Art Reference Library's contribution to the Monuments Men program, Theodore Sizer, Professor of Art History at Yale University and Monuments Man himself, wrote to William Dinsmore on October 12, 1943. You would like to know about the maps on which you all worked so hard and so effectively. They have all come through happily and have been placed just where they belong and in the right hands. The information is in the best possible form, neither too much detail nor too little. My best to your co-workers and to those magnificent women in the Frick. Sadly, destruction and looting continue to this day, and the library's resources remain useful in combating the loss of cultural heritage. For example, most recently, the library has been involved in the digital preservation of the websites of at-risk cultural institutions in Ukraine. You can come see materials related to the library's involvement during World War II for yourself in our reading room. Plan your visit and learn more on our website, frick.org.